I think it's very entertaining. I do. But I love music. I love to hear the voice.
In December 2002, Whitney Houston walked into what should have been a simple TV interview. She was there to promote her new album, but the host had other plans. What started as friendly chat quickly turned into an interrogation about drugs and scandals. Then Whitney said something that shocked America. One sentence that was so bold, so unexpected, it became legendary overnight. The entire room went silent, and the interviewer didn't know how to respond. That single moment became more famous than any song she ever sang. Whitney Houston was born on August 9, 1963, in Newark, New Jersey, and right from the start, she wasn't just another child in the hospital. Her birth was like opening the door to a storm of talent. Her mother, Cissy Houston, was already a Grammy-winning gospel powerhouse who founded the Sweet Inspirations and sang backup for Elvis Presley and Aretha Franklin. Her father, John Russell Houston Jr., was once a soldier and later worked as a city official in Newark. But even that wasn't the whole story. The blood in Whitney's veins carried music and history. Dionne and Dee Dee Warwick were her cousins. Aretha Franklin was her aunt. Opera legend Leontine Price was family. Darlene Love, the voice behind so many hits, was her godmother. And as if that wasn't enough, her great-great-grandfather, Jeremiah Burke Sanderson, had fought for civil rights in the 1800s. Whitney wasn't just born into music, she was born into legacy. But the world she entered wasn't peaceful. When she was just 3 years old in 1967, the Newark race riots exploded around her family's home on Wainwright Street. Sirens, flames, gunshots. These weren't just on TV, they were outside her window. Her childhood was marked by fear and unrest, and things at home weren't stable either. Her parents had married in 1964, just months before her first birthday. But by the time Whitney was a teenager, the marriage was falling apart. Her father had a heart attack that almost killed him, and the emotional damage inside the house matched the chaos outside. They separated when Whitney was 17, but the official divorce dragged on for nearly 10 more years. Around the same time, in 1970, Cissy was launching her solo career, so the family had to move to a quieter neighborhood in East Orange. Whitney was caught between a broken home and a world on fire, and somehow, she still found music. She didn't find it by accident. At age 5, not 11 like some people think, Whitney joined the choir at New Hope Baptist Church in Newark. Her mother, as choir director, gave her professional training before most kids even learn multiplication. By 11, she sang "Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah" as her first solo. But what no one realized was that she had already been in the choir for 6 years. Her voice was so powerful even then that at age 12, she told her mother she wanted to become a professional singer. The church became her classroom. She learned the piano, soaked up the fiery spirit of Pentecostal worship, and by 15, she was already singing backup on Chaka Khan's "I'm Every Woman" in 1978. By the time she was 14, she wasn't dreaming of singing professionally. She already was. She started working with her mother's band, singing background vocals at real shows. In 1978, when she was just 15, she sang on the Michael Zager Band's "Life's a Party." That song didn't make her famous, but industry insiders started noticing the range, the control, the spark. She was also hitting jazz clubs with her mother, learning how to move across a stage, how to keep an audience with her from the first word to the last note. Soon, she was backing artists like Lou Rawls, Herbie Mann, and the Neville Brothers. This wasn't teenage talent. It was already the making of a star. In early 1980, she started getting paid to sing in clubs. By 17, Whitney was becoming a regular on the Manhattan circuit. Places like Reno Sweeney, Mikell's, and Sweetwater's gave her real stages, real pressure, real applause. One unforgettable moment happened in February 1978 at Town Hall. She wasn't even the headliner. Her mother was. But when Whitney stepped up to sing "Tomorrow" from Annie, the crowd rose to their feet. She wasn't just a girl with a good voice anymore. She could stop time. These performances, night after night, shaped the voice that would one day define a generation. But while her music was rising, something unexpected happened. A modeling scout saw her perform at Carnegie Hall and knew instantly she belonged in front of a camera, too. In 1980, she signed with Click Models and then moved to Wilhelmina. The following year, in November 1981, she became one of the first black women ever on the cover of 17. She was 17 years old, and this wasn't just fashion, it was history. The camera loved her. She did ads, spreads in Cosmopolitan, Glamour, and even a Canada Dry commercial. Her face became familiar across the country, but she never let it distract her. Modeling was a way to pay bills. Music was the dream. Even while balancing fame, Whitney stayed in school. She attended Mount St. Dominic Academy, a Catholic all-girls school in Caldwell, and somehow graduated in 1981 despite missing classes for photo shoots and recording sessions. Her mom refused to let her drop out. Offers were already pouring in, but Sissy made her wait. It was smart. After graduation, she signed a deal with Terra Productions and started working with Gene Harvey, who became her manager. The discipline she learned from school would help her survive what came next. Then came the night that changed everything. It was 1983. A freezing winter evening in New York City, and Whitney was on stage at Sweetwater's, not even as the main act. She was just backing her mother when a man named Jerry Griffith from Arista Records saw her again. He had actually seen her sing years earlier, but didn't act. This time, he didn't walk away. He rushed to Clive Davis and said, "You have to see her." Davis came, and Whitney sang "The Greatest Love of All," a song Davis had helped create 10 years earlier for a Muhammad Ali movie. It wasn't just beautiful, it was personal. Davis said she sang with so much heart and power that he knew instantly she was different. On April 10, 1983, she signed with Arista. She was 19. The deal wasn't small. It came after serious offers from CBS and Elektra. In fact, she had already recorded Memories for Material's One Down album on Elektra, and critics called it one of the most stunning ballads they'd ever heard. Davis fought hard to keep her. He even added a rare clause. If he left Arista, Whitney could leave too. That's how much she meant to him. He originally budgeted $200,000 for her debut album, but it ballooned to $400,000. Years later, Whitney gave up the exit clause for millions. Her first official Billboard entry wasn't even solo. In May 1984, she sang "Hold Me" with Teddy Pendergrass. It hit number 46 on the Hot 100 and broke into the top 10 on R&B and adult charts. At the same time, she recorded songs with Jermaine Jackson and sang a duet live on "As the World Turns." All of it was strategic. Clive Davis was building suspense, holding back her debut to make sure it was flawless. In the background, TV was calling too. In 1983, just 2 months after signing with Arista, she appeared on The Merv Griffin Show. That same year, she recorded "Eternal Love" for Paul Jabara's album. She even auditioned for The Cosby Show, nearly landing the role of Denise Huxtable. But music kept pulling her back. Even her commercials couldn't keep her away from the mic. Whitney Houston was only 21 when Clive Davis decided to gamble the future of Arista Records on her. He didn't just sign her. He handpicked every song, hired the best producers, spent 2 years and thousands of dollars sculpting a debut album that had to match her voice. But when it finally came out on Valentine's Day, 1985, the world barely noticed. It entered the Billboard charts at number 166 on March 30th. Most albums debut and vanish. This one climbed slowly, painfully, week by week, for over a year. It took 55 weeks to hit number 1. The last time anyone had taken that long was Fleetwood Mac in 1976. The single that finally changed everything was "You Give Good Love." By mid-1985, momentum began to build, but the real explosion happened in April, when Whitney walked out on national television for the first time. It was The Merv Griffin Show. She sang "How Will I Know?" and suddenly the entire country was paying attention. She looked like a model and sang like thunder. Within hours, radio stations were flooded with requests. Her debut album began to fly, and she was no longer just a rising star. She was the crossover miracle the industry didn't know it needed. MTV was looking for someone who could break the color line without sacrificing mainstream appeal, and Whitney fit perfectly. By 1987, her debut album had sold over 14 million copies around the world. But it wasn't just the sales that shocked people. She became the first woman ever to launch 3 consecutive #1 singles from a debut album: "Saving All My Love for You," "How Will I Know," and "Greatest Love of All." Each topped the charts. The album stayed at #1 for 14 non-consecutive weeks and refused to leave the Billboard 200 for 162 weeks straight, 3 years without fading. It became the best-selling album of 1986 and made Whitney the #1 pop artist that year. By January 2023, it had been certified 14 times platinum in the United States alone. At the Grammy Awards in 1986, she won Best Female Pop Vocal Performance for Saving All My Love for You. On stage, in tears, she thanked her mother, Sissy, and said it was a win for her whole family. But there was something strange about that night. She wasn't nominated for Best New Artist. The reason? She had recorded something the previous year, and that disqualified her. Clive Davis was furious and wrote a letter calling it a disgrace. But Whitney still walked away with a Grammy and an Emmy for that same performance, a rare double that proved she wasn't just popular, she was respected. What most people didn't know was that behind those studio hits, there were battles. During the recording of Greatest Love of All, she clashed hard with Michael Masser, the song's producer. He had written the original for George Benson back in 1977 and didn't want to deviate. Whitney had different instincts. She wanted to infuse it with gospel energy, with raw emotion, with her voice. They argued. She stormed out of sessions. She was only 21, but refused to let anyone control how she sang. In the end, her version won, and it changed the song's place in history. It was a sign of what would come. Whitney was not a puppet. She was a perfectionist. When her second album, simply titled Whitney, dropped on June 2, 1987, something historic happened. It debuted at #1. No female artist had ever done that before. The industry had never seen anything like it. The album didn't climb to the top. It started there, and her reign only grew. Combined with her first album's time at #1, she had now owned the top spot for 25 weeks during the 1980s, more than any other female artist. Then came the anthem, I Wanna Dance with Somebody. Wasn't just a hit, it became her fourth #1 single and took over charts in 13 countries. She opened the Grammy Awards on March 2, 1988, with a performance so electric it left the crowd breathless. That night, she won again. The music video became an MTV staple. The message was clear now. She wasn't just a ballad queen, she could make the world dance. Her 1987-88 tour proved her voice was just as powerful live. 2 sold-out nights at Madison Square Garden pulled in over 117,000 people and nearly $2 million. Her Tampa show brought nearly 50,000 fans. Boston sold out both nights with 36,000 people per show. Europe welcomed her like royalty, with more than 500,000 fans across 12 countries. Her sets lasted over 2 hours. She was delivering high notes and raw emotion night after night. In 1988, her Olympic anthem, One Moment in Time, reached #5 on the Hot 100. She had recorded it during her 9-night Wembley Arena run, backed by the London Symphony Orchestra. The song's video won an Emmy, and her performance stirred something deep during the Seoul Olympics. It was cinematic, spiritual, and unforgettable. But the moment that hurt the most came at the 1988 Soul Train Music Awards. She was booed. Some in the audience claimed she sounded too white and had left behind her black roots. That night exposed the brutal tension between crossover success and cultural identity. Whitney was devastated. She spoke about it years later on the Arsenio Hall show, saying, I sing the way God intended me to sing. The irony was cruel. 12 years later, the same Soul Train Awards crowned her Female Artist of the Decade. By 1990, she had something to prove. I'm Your Baby Tonight was her answer. She took creative control for the first time, working with L.A. Reid and Babyface. The sound was sharper, more R&B, more new jack swing. It topped charts around the world and sold over 10 million copies. She became the first woman to have multiple #1s across 3 different albums. The following year, on January 27, 1991, with the Gulf War just 10 days old, Whitney stood in Tampa Stadium and sang the national anthem at Super Bowl X5. Over 73,000 people watched in person. Over 750 million watched around the world. Her performance gave people chills. It became the best-selling version of the anthem ever released. Later, it was revealed she had lip-synced to a pre-recorded track. Not to fake it, but because the NFL couldn't risk a live technical failure. She had sung it live in the studio, and the power of that version still moved the world. Then came the moment that changed everything. November 17, 1992, the Bodyguard soundtrack hit stores. The movie was a global hit, but the soundtrack shattered records. I Will Always Love You ruled the Hot 100 for 14 weeks straight, the longest ever by a female artist. It sold 2.1 million copies on its first run. By January 1993, it became the first album to ever sell over 1 million copies in a single week. Eventually, it sold 45 million copies worldwide. That one song became part of the world's soul. What fans never knew was that during the filming, Whitney suffered a miscarriage. She described it as extremely painful and kept it private. Her grief leaked into her performance, giving her on-screen moments a haunting realism. That personal pain lived beneath the glamour. In 1994, she reached another peak. At the Grammy Awards on March 1st, she won 3 in a single night: Record of the Year, Best Pop Vocal Performance, and Album of the Year. She now had 8 Grammys, more than most artists would see in a lifetime. After a long break, she returned on November 17, 1998, with My Love Is Your Love. This time, she embraced hip-hop. She brought in Wyclef Jean, Missy Elliott, Lauryn Hill, and Q-Tip. The result was electric. Heartbreak Hotel became a monster hit, holding #1 on the R&B chart for 7 weeks. The album sold over 10 million copies. She won her 6th and final Grammy for It's Not Right, But It's Okay. Her sound had evolved, and her audience had followed. But the tour in 1999 was chaos. Cancellations plagued the North American leg, but Europe embraced her. It became the highest-grossing arena tour of the year there. During this time, she recorded a duet with Enrique Iglesias called Could I Have This Kiss Forever? They didn't even meet in person. She recorded her part in Germany. He recorded his in Los Angeles. The song topped charts across Europe. Her final studio album, I Look to You, came out on August 31st, 2009. It went straight to #1 with 305,000 first-week sales. Her voice wasn't what it used to be, and her Oprah appearance on September 14th and 15 helped push sales again, but live, she struggled. In 2010, she received a Lifetime Achievement Award at the BET Honors, but her performance that night was painful. The once unshakable voice trembled. Audiences whispered. Her past drug use had taken a toll. On Oprah, earlier that year, she had confessed, saying by 1996, drugs had become part of everyday life. She said she was losing herself. She met him in 1989. Whitney Houston was 26 years old. Bobby Brown was just 20. They crossed paths at the Soul Train Music Awards. She invited him to her birthday party later that summer. And what started as a casual friendship slowly turned into something deeper. He was wild. She was America's golden voice. But something between them clicked, even though she was 5.5 years older. When he asked her to marry him in 1991, she said no. It wasn't part of her plan. But then came July 18th, 1992. 800 guests gathered at her $11 million New Jersey mansion. She wore a $40,000 lace gown. The entire wedding was drenched in purple. And despite all the smiles and the music, there was tension in the air. Her family didn't like him. They had their reasons. He had a violent past. He had already fathered 3 children with 2 different women. He had been shot. He had been arrested. And now he was tying himself to the most famous woman in music. Their daughter, Bobby Christina, was born on March 4th, 1993. And just 4 months earlier, Whitney had taken the world by storm with The Bodyguard. Her voice was everywhere. She had 3 new Grammys in her hands, but her private life was breaking. Bobby Brown's arrests started piling up. Drunk driving, traffic violations, violence. He became a headline magnet, and not for the right reasons. Whispers of cheating, drugs, and fights followed them everywhere. But still, by 1999, they were officially the most successful star couple on Earth. Guinness gave them the title. And that same year, Whitney accepted a Grammy with a strange edge in her voice. She said, "It's not right, but it's okay." Everyone knew who she meant. Then came 2003. Police were called to their home in Atlanta. Whitney had visible bruises, a cut on her lip, marks on her face. Brown was charged with battery, and still, she stayed. In 2009, she finally told Oprah the truth. He spit on her. He hit her. Her daughter had seen it. She said she once struck him over the head with a phone. She explained how hard it was to leave because she was his wife. She said the abuse wasn't just physical, it was emotional, and his drinking only got worse as her career soared. It hurt him, she said, that she was rising and he was fading. There was someone else in Whitney's life too, Robin Crawford. They met in 1980. Robin was 19. Whitney was just 16. Robin promised to protect her. And for 2 decades, she did. The rumors were endless. People said they were more than friends. Whitney always denied it. But in 2019, Robin finally said it was true. In her book, she wrote, they were romantically involved in the early 80s, but Whitney ended it in 1982. She gave Robin a Bible and said, "We can't do this. They'd use it against us." Her mother had warned her. It wasn't natural, she'd said. Bobby Brown also confirmed it in 2016. He said their relationship had once been sexual, but when he entered the picture, it had to change. By 2005, the world saw the truth. A reality show aired. It was called Being Bobby Brown, and it shocked everyone. Whitney, once known for elegance, was now screaming profanities on national television. "Kiss my ass," "hell to the no." The phrases became memes, but they damaged her. Songwriter Diane Warren said it best. Watching Whitney on that show felt like watching a tragedy unfold in real time. She never returned for season 2. That same year, Whitney's mother stormed into her house with police and a court order. She had to force her daughter into treatment. The walls were spray-painted with eyes and strange faces. Whitney had cut herself out of framed photos. Her addiction had taken full control. It had started so quietly. Just marijuana in the late 80s. But by the 90s, cocaine was part of her routine. On January 11, 2000, she was caught with 15.2 grams of marijuana in Hawaii. She simply walked away and boarded her flight with Bobby before the police even arrived. She could have faced jail. She didn't. Charges came years later, but the damage had already been done. She tried to stop. She entered rehab 3 times, once in 2004, again in 2005, and a final time in 2011. She admitted to Oprah that by 1996, drugs were a daily thing. She wasn't happy. She was losing herself. Even after rehab, she said the craving never left. It stayed with her. By 2007, her money was gone. She had made around $250 million in her life. She had sold 170 million albums, and yet court papers showed she had only $40,000 in cash. She was $4 million in debt. Her $8.2 million home in Atlanta was almost lost. She owed more than $1 million in unpaid mortgage and taxes. Her New Jersey mansion was mortgaged too. By the end, her net worth had dropped to negative $20 million. She was asking Arista Records for advances just to survive. One insider said Whitney should have Mariah Carey money, and she's flat broke. Then came the final public humiliation. In 2011, Prince banned her from attending his concerts. She had been showing up intoxicated. She kept asking to perform. She wouldn't stop. She begged the staff to let her on stage. They refused. She embarrassed herself. 10 days later, she entered rehab again. She was allowed to leave with a monitor, but the spiral had already begun. That same year, she performed I Look to You at the BET Celebration of Gospel. It would be her last major performance. The album came out in 2009. It debuted at #1, but now her voice was fading. On February 9th, 2012, she appeared at a pre-Grammy party at True Nightclub. She performed with Kelly Price. Witnesses said she looked bloated. Her clothes didn't match. She smelled of alcohol. Her legs had blood streaks. Her wrists were scratched. That same day, hotel staff found her doing handstands by the pool. She was wandering the grounds of the Beverly Hills Hotel. 2 days later, on February 11th, 2012, she was found face down in her bathtub. It was 3:55 p.m. She was 48 years old. The coroner said she drowned, but the toxicology report showed cocaine. Her lungs had water, which meant she was still alive when she went under. She either passed out from the drugs or had a heart attack and slipped beneath the water. The woman who had once ruled the world died alone, in debt, with more questions than answers. Whitney Houston wasn't just a voice. She was lightning in a bottle. But sometimes that lightning struck too hard, especially when she sat down for interviews. One of the most unforgettable moments came in December 2002. Whitney was on ABC, sitting across from Diane Sawyer. The interview was meant to promote her new album, Just Whitney, but it quickly spiraled into something else. Diane started pressing her about drug rumors, and then, out of nowhere, Whitney leaned forward and dropped a line that became famous in seconds. She said, "First of all, let's get one thing straight. Crack is cheap. I make too much money to ever smoke crack. Let's get that straight, okay? We don't do crack. We don't do that. Crack is whack." L.A. Reid, who had arranged the whole thing, later admitted he'd made a mistake. He said he'd failed Whitney. The goal was to talk about her music, not to corner her about personal demons. But the damage was done. That clip overshadowed the album, and it followed her for the rest of her life. Then came Wendy Williams. In 2003, Whitney joined Wendy on the radio. It wasn't face-to-face, just a phone call. But even through the line, you could feel the heat. Wendy tried to poke at Whitney, tried to bring up the Diane Sawyer moment, tried to ask about drugs again. But Whitney didn't hold back. She fired back with lines that were so quick, so sharp, Wendy couldn't keep up. At one point, she told her straight, "Well, you don't, Wendy. You don't show yourself in the best light. People still listen to you." When Wendy pushed harder, Whitney drew a line. She said, "You're not talking to me. I'm a mother. Only my mother has privy to that information. You talk to your child about that. Don't ask me no questions like I'm a child." The whole radio station went quiet. Fans later called it a masterclass in standing your ground. She didn't yell. She didn't panic. She just shut it down. Every time Wendy reached for something deeper, Whitney answered with fire. It wasn't just defiance, it was control.